Hello there. Putin is looking for 300,000 new soldiers for his war, and some conscripts want to flee. And because of that, a dispute is brewing in the EU. Many Russians probably did not expect this, that the Russian army wants to draft hundreds of thousands of reservists for the Ukraine war. But President Vladimir Putin announced that on Wednesday. The Russian people reacted to this, but not quite in the spirit of the Kremlin. There were spontaneous protests against the measure in numerous cities in the country, and at least 1,300 people are said to have been arrested. Because many Russians who are to be conscripted want to go abroad instead. One escape destination is Turkey, where you can enter without a visa. At least 40,000 Russians are said to have fled to Armenia and 50,000 to Georgia. Arrivals from Russia are also increasing in Kazakhstan. And in the rest of Europe? The federal government has signaled that reservists who do not want to fight at the front are generally welcome in Germany. As a rule, deserters threatened by severe repression receive international protection in Germany, is what Interior Minister Nancy Faeser told the German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. However, the granting of asylum is a case-by-case decision, which also includes a security check. Anyone who hates Putin's path and loves liberal democracy is very welcome in Germany, emphasized Federal Justice Minister Marco Buschmann on Twitter. But this opinion is not shared in other EU countries. There is a risk of a dispute that looks quite similar to another and was possibly inevitable. 3 weeks ago, the EU foreign ministers met in Prague to decide on a collective visa ban for Russians. The Baltic states and Finland in particular had campaigned for this. There was no collective punishment, and ways to get in the West were still complicated, because it was agreed to cancel a visa agreement between the EU and Russia. This has made it more difficult for Russians to obtain entry permits to Europe since last Monday. The visa cost more money and the application process can take months. During the consultations, the federal government emphasized that a complete visa freeze would send the wrong signal. This would alienate people who are considering the leap to freedom. Exactly that could now happen en masse. The termination of the agreement may not be a collective ban, though. As a result, however, it represents a shortage of visas available. It is currently unclear to what extent the most recent provisions may affect the asylum procedures of Russian deserters. A spokeswoman for the German Ministry of the Interior told T-Online on Friday that the refugee soldiers would usually be granted protection. The same applies to members of the opposition and other endangered people for whom quick and unbureaucratic procedures are currently being used. As a result, 438 people from Russia have been admitted so far. However, it remains unclear to what extent the recently adopted rule at EU level will make the process more difficult. Human rights organizations such as Pro Asyl point out that appeals for the admission of conscientious objectors have no substance if they have no chance of reaching European soil. Instead, Managing Director Günther Burkhardt advocates issuing humanitarian visas to drafted Russians who have managed to travel to countries like Georgia or Turkey. So far, however, there are no plans for such a special reception program either in Germany or at EU level. If Latvian Foreign Minister Edgars Rinkēvičs has his way, it should stay that way. Many Russians who are now leaving their homeland agreed with the killing of Ukrainians, he said on Twitter. They would not have protested against it. It is not correct to regard them as conscious deniers. He also sees significant security risks emanating from these people. Other EU countries see it similarly. Finland's Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto has now announced that a solution will be found. His country does not want to become a transit country for Schengen visas that other countries have issued. Russia's northwestern neighbor is particularly affected by the situation, as the Finnish border is currently the only EU external border that is at least partially open to Russians on a regular basis. Despite recognizable differences, the European countries want to think about a common solution. German government spokesman Steffen Hebestreit said on Friday that the member states would discuss together so that a viable solution can be found. And a spokeswoman for the EU Commission also confirmed that a joint solution was being sought. The first answers could already be given today. Then the 27 EU ambassadors want to deal with the topic. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.